Welcome once again. Today we begin with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying his government has no intention of permanently occupying the Gaza Strip. Speaking during a video address in Tel Aviv, Mr. Netanyahu also noted that Israel has no goal of displacing the civilian population in Gaza. His comments come after U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who visited Israel, stressed that the daily death toll on civilians in Gaza is far too high, while also stating that Palestinian civilians must be able to return home.
I want to make a few points absolutely clear. Israel has no intention of permanently occupying Gaza or displacing its civilian population. Israel is fighting Hamas terrorists, not the Palestinian population. And we are doing so in full compliance with international law. The IDF is doing its utmost to minimize civilian casualties, while Hamas is doing its utmost to maximize them by using Palestinian civilians as human shields. The IDF urges Palestinian civilians to leave war zones by disseminating leaflets, making phone calls, providing safe passage corridors, while Hamas prevents Palestinians from leaving at gunpoint and often with gunfire. Our goal is to rid Gaza of Hamas terrorists and free our hostages. Once this is achieved, Gaza can be demilitarized and de-radicalized, thereby creating a possibility for a better future for Israel and Palestinians alike.
Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has met with the president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, in the West Bank city of Ramallah. According to officials, both parties held bilateral talks, and Mr. Blinken pledged to promote governance reforms for Palestinians as part of U.S. initiatives to mobilize the region in support of post-conflict plans for Gaza, including supporting the establishment of a Palestinian state. The U.S. diplomat is touring the region as the White House aims to prevent the Gaza war from growing into a regional conflict amid rising tensions with Lebanon's Hezbollah in the north, as well as with Iran and its proxies across the Middle East. The visit marks Mr. Blinken's fifth to Israel and the West Bank since the October 7th attack. In the meantime, the leaders of Egypt, Jordan and the Palestinian Authority, which administers parts of the Israeli-occupied West Bank, have met in the southern Red Sea city of Aqaba to discuss the war and surging violence in the West Bank. Jordan's King Abdullah II, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas have continually called for an immediate ceasefire and have met several times during the Israel-Hamas conflict. The summit comes as the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who is also in the region. Egypt and Jordan have acted as peace brokers in past conflicts between Israel and Hamas, which rules the Gaza Strip. Both nations have accused Israel of trying to liquidate Palestinian demand for a statehood by driving Palestinians off Gaza. Elsewhere, White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby says the United States is not aware of any cooperation between Hamas and North Korea, responding to allegations made by South Korea. The National Intelligence Service in South Korea had said that Hamas fighters were allegedly using an F-7 rocket launcher made in North Korea in its fight with Israeli Defense Forces.
What we said about this. I'm not aware of any indications that there's been some sort of cooperation militarily between Hamas and North Korea. I just don't have anything to verify that. And as I said, and we stand by what we said about this. We find it without merit, and we find it counterproductive. And I'll leave it there.
And the United Nations Security Council has adopted a resolution on maritime security in the Red Sea after recent attacks by Houthi rebels. 11 countries voted in favor of the resolution, while 4 countries, namely Algeria, China, Mozambique and Russia, abstained from voting.
The resolution unequivocally demands the Houthis cease their brazen attacks, which violate international law. It underscores the Council's support for navigational rights and freedoms of vessels of all states in the Red Sea, including for merchant and commercial vessels transiting the Bab el-Mandab in accordance with international law. And it makes clear that the transit passage of merchants and commercial vessels through the Red Sea must not be impeded. And adopt this resolution. Repeated Houthi attacks on international shipping are a security threat. They are an economic threat, increasing the prices people pay for food, medicine, and energy. And as the resolution before us emphasizes, they are a humanitarian threat, undermining the ability of the international community to deliver assistance to more than 21 million Yemeni people in need. Let me be 100% clear here. The provision of arms and related material of all types to the Houthis is a violation of Resolution 2216. And adopting this resolution today will reaffirm that all member states, including Iran, must adhere to their obligations.
If necessary, and as previously stated by the UK Defence Secretary, we will not hesitate to take further action to deter threats to freedom of navigation in the Red Sea. The UK is committed to ensuring freedom of navigation and trade in the Red Sea.
And the World Health Organization Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus is lamenting that although the health body is equipped with supplies, teams and strategies, lack of access to the Gaza Strip has stumped its plans to deliver aid to the area. Intense bombardment, restrictions on movement, fuel shortages and interrupted communications make it difficult for humanitarian bodies to reach those in need. He's concerned that lack of potable water and overcrowding are creating ideal conditions for diseases to thrive.
The barrier to delivering humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza is not the capabilities of the UN, WHO, or our partners. The barrier is access. We call on Israel to approve requests by WHO and other partners to deliver humanitarian aid. We continue to call for a ceasefire, but even without one, corridors can be established to allow the safe passage of humanitarian aid and workers. We continue to call for the release of the remaining hostages, and we continue to call on all sides to protect healthcare in accordance with their obligations under international humanitarian law. Healthcare must always be protected and respected. It cannot be attacked and it cannot be militarized.
We've heard various comments made about the UN isn't doing enough, the UN isn't doing enough. If you continue to destroy infrastructure, if you continue to destroy services at this rate, and then you blame the people who are trying to come in and support and help and provide life-saving assistance, who's to blame here? Is it the people who are destroying the infrastructure and destroying the livelihoods and destroying the services? Or is it those who are trying to help restore those services under intense bombardment, under the threat of violence? Are they the ones to blame? Rick said it quite clearly. We are ready. WHO is there. You've seen the images from the field. We are on the ground and we are serving. We can do more. We can do much more. We must be given the means to do much more. And right now that's not possible.
In the meantime, the International Court of Justice based in The Hague is holding its first hearing on South Africa's genocide case against Israel, with several countries welcoming the move amid a global chorus for a ceasefire in Gaza. South Africa filed the lawsuit end of December, accusing Israel of genocide in its war in Gaza and seeking a halt to the brutal military assault that has killed more than 23,000 Palestinians, nearly 10,000 of them children. The ICJ is expected to deliver only an opinion on the genocide allegation, as the case is not a criminal trial. Israel has vehemently rejected the accusation as baseless, with the U.S., a staunch ally, calling it meritless. The 84-page filing by South Africa says Israel violated the 1948 Genocide Convention drawn up in the aftermath of the World War II and the Holocaust. Both Israel and South Africa are signatories to the United Nations Genocide Convention, which gives the ICJ, the highest UN legal body, jurisdiction to rule on disputes over the treaty.
We are also particularly mindful of Israel's institutionalized regime of discriminatory laws, policies and practices designed and maintained to establish domination, subjecting the Palestinian people to apartheid on both sides of the Green Line. Decades-long impunity for widespread and systematic human rights violations has emboldened Israel in its recurrence and intensification of international crimes in Palestine. At the outset, South Africa acknowledges that the genocidal acts and omissions by the State of Israel inevitably form part of a continuum of illegal acts perpetrated against the Palestinian people since 1948. The application places Israel's genocidal acts and omissions within the broader context of Israel's 75-year apartheid, 56-year occupation, and 16-year siege imposed on the Gaza Strip, a siege which itself has been described by the director of UNRWA Affairs in Gaza as a silent killer of people.
The violence and the destruction in Palestine and Israel did not begin on the 7th of October 2023. The Palestinians have experienced systematic oppression and violence for the last 76 years. On 6 October 2023 and every day since October the 7th, 2023. In the Gaza Strip, at least since 2004, Israel continues to exercise control over the airspace, territorial waters, land crossing, water, electricity, and civilian infrastructure, as well as over key government functions. No armed attack on a state territory, no matter how serious, even an attack involving atrocity crimes, can provide any justification for or defense to breaches to the convention, whether as a matter of law or morality. Israel's response to the 7th of October 2023 attack has crossed this line and give rise to the breaches of the convention.
Meanwhile, Palestinians have gathered at the Nelson Mandela Square in Ramallah to thank the South African government for filing that case against Israel at the International Court of Justice. Participants held banners calling for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, with Mayor of Ramallah, located in the occupied West Bank, saying thank you to South Africa. South Africa has been highly critical of Israel's military operation in Gaza. The governing African National Congress also has a long history of solidarity with the Palestinian cause. It sees parallels with its struggle against apartheid, a policy of racial segregation and discrimination enforced by the white minority government in South Africa at that time against the country's black majority until the first democratic elections in 1994. Nelson Mandela had also compared the plight of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank with that of black South Africans under the apartheid system. Well, earlier, my colleague Layo Laride spoke with the former prosecutor at the International Criminal Court on his thoughts on the petition.
Well, South Africa seeks to base the ICJ's jurisdiction on Article 9 of the Genocide Convention. As you rightly pointed out, both South Africa and Israel are parties to the Genocide Convention, so they're contracting parties. The case itself raises important issues concerning the Genocide Convention itself. The first issue is that the provisions of the Genocide Convention imposes a fundamental obligation on contracting parties to the convention, in that state parties to the convention have an interest of their own in the proper interpretation and application and the fulfillment of those obligations in that convention, regardless of whether or not they are directly affected by those alleged violations. In addition, the prohibition against such egregious conduct, such as genocide, is a preemptory norm in international law. And what that basically means is that a state party like South Africa can bring a case before the court on behalf of the international community as a whole, and that is what is known as common interest rights as enshrined in the Genocide Convention itself. So it presents quite a few unique issues in relation to the ability of states to have jurisdiction before the International Court of Justice in relation to this case. Now, the prohibition contained in the Genocide Convention is an absolute one. It's not an obligation. And therefore, it is not enough, for example, for Israel to argue that it acted in self-defense or in response to provocation. Israel's response, therefore, has to be within the ambit of international law, and there are absolutely no exceptions, and no genocide cannot, under any circumstances, be justified.
Indeed, while we wait to, hear from Israel tomorrow, it will be bringing its defense at the court. But what can one expect from the general proceedings? Is the court able to, make Israel stop the war in Gaza?
Well, the measures that are being conducted at the moment are referred to as provisional measures, a bit like a hearing for injunction or injunctive relief. Which is what we would refer to it as in Nigeria. It's designed to adopt the status quo, to preserve the evidence pending the hearing on the merits, which may be about 2 years away from now. So in legal terms, provisional measures are sought to protect what we refer to as core rights under the convention. They are not a request for the determination on the merits of the case. What do I expect Israel to be saying? Well, I expect Israel to be saying that whatever is going on in Gaza at the moment is not a violation of the Genocide Convention. It may amount to other crimes, international crimes, but it's certainly not a violation of the Genocide Convention in that there is a specific interest, there's a specific mens rea to be demonstrated for the crime of genocide to be proven. And that is referred to as a specific interest to commit genocide, which is in Latin called the dolus specialis. You have to demonstrate an intention to destroy a group in whole or in part. And Israel, of course, will be challenging that no such intention exists. That's what I suspect they'll be saying.
All right, then, earlier on, you mentioned the international community, South Africa bringing its case on behalf of the international community. And we've seen several countries welcoming South Africa's ICJ case against Israel, but not Israel and, its staunch ally, the U.S. In fact, the U.S. Tags this case as meritless. Do you agree with this?
No, I certainly don't. I mean, I certainly don't. I'm not going to make any comments in relation to the merits of the case. All the court has to consider at this case is that there's a prima facie case of irreparable harm if the orders are not given. And I think it's sufficient enough at this stage for South Africa to demonstrate that there's a prima facie case that there would be irreparable prejudice suffered if these provisional orders are not granted by the court. I think at this stage, that's what the court needs to concern itself with.